EA forced their studios to use the Frostbite engine. That's something you see a lot in internet comment sections. But is that really true? My name's Mike Williams. I'm joined by Gareth Evans. We're going to be talking about that today because ex-Bioware General Manager Aaryn Flynn has been talking about what it's like working under EA. Flynn was with Bioware for 17 years. So way before EA took over, in other words. They came in 2007, I think. He's worked on some real all-timers for Bioware: Baldur's Gate 2, Neverwinter Nights, Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, all the classics, really. And then as the Bioware boss, he oversaw Dragon Age 2, Mass Effect 3, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Mass Effect Andromeda. So that's probably not a list of my favourite Bioware titles, but he's a veteran of the company anyway, and he left the company in July 2017, as last year, only a few months after the Andromeda game released, and it wasn't hotly reviewed or anything, so he left shortly after Andromeda came out, and everything happened with Bioware Montreal and everything, and the studio was essentially closed down and all that sort of stuff. He told the Kotaku Split Screen podcast that EA is excellent at giving creative freedom, and they don't impose the Frostbite engine on their games. So that's kind of flies in the face of what you hear online, doesn't it?
That's true. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's EA get all the credit for the bad things that happen, but now there's this guy who's worked with EA for numerous years with no apparent motive for saying anything nice or bad towards EA in any way. No apparent motive for saying anything nice. And coming out and saying that it's not EA's fault. About we used the Frostbite engine is not EA's fault. So
and that's the thing. That's why this is so interesting, I think, because it just completely flies contrary to what people say online. That's the perceived wisdom. People state it as a fact in comment sections and stuff. Don't trust EA. They force Frostbite engine on people. That's one of the charges that are often leveled at them. So this guy's come out and he's apparently there's no apparent affiliation with EA anymore. He's left. He was with Bioware before EA came in. If anything, it's probably not what you'd expect if someone's left a company after having been there before a big corporation came in and took over and everything. You'd maybe expect them to be a little bit sour, if anything, and have something not good to say. So he's come out and said something that is just completely not what people normally say online. Yeah. So that's where the kind of discussion begins for me, really. How difficult is it to read something like this and kind of what is his motivation for saying it? Where's this come from for him? He's just talking on a podcast. He's just having a chat about his experiences. Does he have a reason to make up why?
Well, it is the Kotaku podcast, so he knows it's going to get headlines. So that's the first thing. And if he does have any sort of motive to, I don't know where he is in his job position at the moment. Maybe he's looking for a prospective employer to say, look, if I work for you, I'm not going to stab you in the back. Maybe that's some sort of motive. If you wanted to be cynical about it, of course, but that's why we're here, isn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess.
Pretty much. But when it comes to EA, it's just so easy. It's just so easy to dislike EA, the most hated company in America, 2015 or something like that.
A few years running.
Yeah, a lot of the time, everyone hates on EA, so it's easy to level criticism at them. They may well be the shittest company ever known to man, but not for the reasons that you thought.
I mean, it is, they're like classic corporation, aren't they? They're like ultimate video game corporation almost in terms of the decision they make. But here's this guy saying the complete opposite. The thing about creative freedom I find very interesting because he's saying that not only do they not force the Frostbite engine, but they also had a lot of freedom to do whatever they want. Bioware are actually using the Frostbite engine for the upcoming Anthem, which is the next game next big title from that studio, and they kind of very much following in the footsteps of Destiny or something like that, and it's this kind of sci-fi found future RPG thing, and they're building all of that using the Frostbite engine. He says that they moved over to that engine from Eclipse because Eclipse just wasn't working out for them. That was the one they were using for Dragon Age and stuff like that, and that's what they had been working with. And it was their decision. They were the ones who said, we're going to move over to Frostbite because it's got some really promising results, those are his words, over something like the Unreal Engine, which is maybe a bit more common, a bit more ubiquitous. And they didn't go for the Unreal Engine, they went for Frostbite because they were excited by it. And that's what the studio has been working with. since then. It was their decision.
Well, EA, it's their engine, right? So they're going to develop it. They're going to continue to develop it. They're going to continue to plow resources into this engine. So it makes sense for a company working for EA to use the engine that they're actively developing, because any advancements that they make with that engine, they can automatically integrate into the development of their game. So I don't know how much of a... It was like, it's an easy decision because of that, because of those factors I've just mentioned. I don't know how much realistically it would have, how realistic it would have been to use another engine. I don't know what kind of, it might have been just a no-brainer for him. Like, you have to use this engine.
Of course,
Not forced to, but, there's no realistic other choice.
Well, and they're in that environment as well. They're surrounded, their EA is they're under that umbrella. They've got an internal team that I'm assuming they could communicate very closely with if they wanted to adapt things and change things. There's already multiplayer built into Frostbite, all these things that kind of make sense. But that's not the only thing we were talking about. Of course, whenever you talk about EA, microtransactions come up, as with many AAA corporations these days, but obviously the topic of microtransactions is a big one for EA, of course, because of Star Wars Battlefront 2 at the end of last year and all that controversy. So he was asked whether EA executives require studios like Bioware to add microtransactions to their games, because a lot of EA games have microtransactions in them now, almost all of them. Well, he says, not in my experience, no. They have an ambitious business plan and they want to do certain things, everything from growing market share to entering new markets, but those are very good goals. There's nothing controversial about those goals. I think they are a great company to be a part of because they are very much about the creative process. They care about that. So they want you to be successful and they will do whatever they can to help you be successful. Every company has got constraints, things you've got to do, things you have to get done, but they are excellent at giving creative freedom for sure. Now that is quite open, but it's pretty categorical in his own personal experience. No microtransactions. They weren't required to do it, put microtransactions or loot boxes or anything in their game. Does that surprise you to hear?
Well, it sounds quite contradictory to me, because on one hand he says that EA are good at doing the marketing, making sure that all the business side of things they're dealt with, they're focusing on that. And on the flip side, he says that they're great with creative freedom. Now, a lot of the time you would assume that those two things conflict, like being
mutually exclusive. Like you can't.
Exactly. You can't focus on being creative and making money at the same time, because in some way your creativity is forced into a certain direction if you want to make money out of the product. So the other thing that springs to mind about what he's saying too is, like, maybe he works for Bioware RPG games, right? So maybe EA are just aware, like, we're not going to make loads of money off microtransactions no matter how we put them in an RPG game. So maybe it's different over at DICE. Maybe they give a different remit to DICE. You have to make X amount of money because we're giving you so many resources, or it's just might be a different ball game for them.
Like, they talk to different studios in different ways. Obviously, talking about ball games, their sports ones are going to have, going to make a ton of money. There's that famous line that we've reported or talked about multiple times, where's your version of FIFA Ultimate Team? That makes $1 billion a year or whatever it is. And they just haven't... that is completely contradictory to what is being said here, that they are not being forced to do microtransactions. But that was a line. Do you remember that line that we reported on of some executive somewhere high up in EA talking to his developer saying, okay, that's all well and good, but where's your version of FIFA Ultimate Team? Well, this isn't what Aaryn Flynn is saying at all. He's saying the complete opposite. Now, he does say, obviously, he does stress a few times that they are a business. They have a business plan. They have a business model that they want to follow. They have goals and ambitions for making money and stuff. But they also allow creative freedom. So does that mean they say, you need to make this amount of money? It's up to you how you do that. They're not necessarily saying you have to put loot boxes in this game. But again, he has left the company now, and I think since Star Wars Battlefront 2, things will have changed dramatically. They already have changed. Because they're taking that stuff out of Battlefront 2.
That's right. It would have been some sort of an enlightenment moment for EA, and they just have to, reflect on what happened and think, well, this isn't working for us. Building our community and being, it isn't great doing what we're doing and carrying on. So they've had to reassess things. That's for sure. So. Whether they change their ways in future, like Ubisoft are trying to make a change. Whether they go ahead and do that is yet to be seen. But we should note that this guy is just one guy out of many guys who work for EA. So his experience won't be representative of everyone. So if he says that EA are great and they're great to work for and they create freedom, doesn't mean that that's the same across the board. So that's something that I've got to stress there too. Is like, one example of something doesn't prove the rule, the general rule.
But there you go. That's just something we wanted to talk about today because it just, it flies in the face of what everyone says online and the comments and stuff. So this is just another perspective from inside the studio. But yeah, definitely we should consider where this is coming from for him on a personal basis. And this is only one studio for Bioware, and this is just one perspective of what's going on inside EA. But something to take into account anyway, for sure. Thanks a lot for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.